So like we were just talking about, we could go in so many different directions with the questions on this particular interview. What I really wanted to discuss with you was business ethics, because out of everybody that I know, ethics shines through you so much more. I mean, it is part of your essence. It's part of your personal values. It's part of your company values. I've watched you over the last, I don't know, what, year and a half, 2 years since we've known each
Yep.
other, grow these companies that are that just jump up in growth, and that are all based on relationships, which is like near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
It's the relationship that you and I have in Club 28. It's the relationship that we have with our team members. It's the relationship that we have with our vendors and our customers and our prospects, and my family relationships and my friend, and that all exudes from you as well, which I think, you flew down here, what, about a month or so ago.
Yep.
We sat down and we spent the day together having a face-to-face meeting. We mapped out a lot of shit. I got to tell you, which I didn't tell you this before, but like my favorite part of that whole thing, and I love whiteboarding stuff. So we whiteboarded a whole fucking day, which was amazing. I liked it. I
Yo.
hope you got
Oh,
something out of it. I loved
it's
it.
incredible. Yeah, sure.
My favorite part of the whole day was sitting down at dinner and just literally talking. We talked about business. We talked about family. We talked about a lot of fun stuff. And it's just connected all the dots between everything that I see you doing in business to grow and everything that you just live by. So I hate to limit us today by
Sure.
saying we're going to talk about ethics, because I think that we should talk about marketing, and we should talk about team development, and we should talk about pretty much everything else that you and I talk about when we
Yeah.
talk business.
Yeah, Chris, I I'm at a point in life, and now being invited to stages and interviews and talking to people that this idea of conscious capitalism is like, building a business that is based on like true virtues and like really helping people and creating value, and it's more than just selling stuff, is something that's really near and dear to my heart. And that's why I build companies, why I pivoted my life from being a restaurateur years ago, right? I mean, you know the story. I mean, I built lots of restaurants in freaking Manhattan of all places. And it was just no fulfillment. It was just lots of money, right? And it was just money. It was just, yeah, I love the creativity of it. I love the people, but there was no fulfillment, and now I build companies where there's more fulfillment than I know what to do with. And I have this crazy belief. It used to be naive, and now a proven belief that you can build really big, scalable companies while actually helping people and doing freaking good stuff. And it's not about, how to trick somebody into giving you their cash and hopefully they can stick around long enough, because that's just, I believe we're coming into a day and an age when, people are going to vote better with their dollars. As millennials now become the voting populace, Gen Xers are the voting, and it's just people want better places to vote with their money. And, so entrepreneurs like us that are building really freaking cool companies that genuinely help people, this is the longevity trade, right? It's not an offer, it's not a short term gain, but you're building a brand, you're building a movement, you're building a true company. And that's what geeks me, man. I wake up every day and, whether it's bleeding my eyes out behind a computer or go into my fulfillment center and get my hands dirty with my staff, and it's just building towards something that helps people. So that's something I'm really really passionate about.
Hey, so uh, it is difficult sometimes, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs to understand this, because when they first get into business, the very first thing that they want to do is they want to make a lot of money, right? They want that top line to be super fucking high. And then when they get that, when they start seeing their gross grow, and then then all of a sudden they say, well, wait, I'm super smart. I know the difference between gross and net. Now I want my net to grow so I could pocket some more of this money. And then what's the most common thing that you see people doing, right? They all of a sudden they've got a Rollie, they've got a Lambo, they start spending all this capital, as opposed to like studying and understanding how to now take this thing that they call a business and scaling it, like taking some of that money, putting it back in, and increasing things like what you're talking about, increasing the value of the relationships inside of your company so that you could have these two magical figures start going up, right? Lifetime value, because people know you, they love you, they understand that they could trust your company, and they just keep coming back and buying more from you. And retention, right? The retention of a customer, where instead of them buying, like let's take one of your companies is a like one of the best green, healthy, cleaner, I guess we could call it cleaner products company, cleaning product company. I mean, laundry. You've got all the laundry products. You've got the kitchen products. You've got all these different products. But inside of there, your goal, like you and I have worked on this for a year now. Your goal is not just to sell a product, like you were saying before. It's to sell a product and create a relationship so that person comes back and they just subscribe and they buy more and more products every single month. And then they tell their friends about it. And the testimonials that you get are mind blowing, because you literally put your heart behind that. Now that costs you nothing. I mean, yes, you have a tremendous overhead because this is a physical product, but building that relationship costs you nothing. Yet the viral growth that you've had on that, where all these other companies are throwing more money at marketing and conniving and trying to, not that marketing is bad, but bad marketing is bad, and just trying to trick people into the first sale. So anyway, kudos to you.
Thanks, man. I mean, I agree. And, people talk about, hey, what's your greatest asset? Everyone has oh, it's my employees, or it's my list, or it's this or that and the other thing. And I think it's a combination thereof. But people think about the list and their customer base. It's like, hey, I've got X 100,000 people on my email list, or I have X thousand customers, or whatever. And it's like, no, they're actually human freaking beings, right? They're actually humans. And they're not an IP address. It's not an email account. They're actually freaking humans that have serious pains, desire. They're real people. And the more that we treat them like actual real people and not IP addresses or email records, the more longevity relationships you build with the customers. I mean, you and I mean, we're in the middle of doing a product launch, a full-on product launch every single week, right? For the foreseeable future, we have products stacked up in manufacturing. I mean, I have my own manufacturing facility. We're rocking. And, we're now in the 5th launch, 5 weeks in a row of absolutely hammering our email list, SMS, bot, hey, we've got this new thing, you've been asking us for it. We created this thing. And, traditionally, well, I mean, you're going to do this big launch, and then, your attrition rate's going to go down. People are going to be buying less because you're hitting their email box every single week for new stuff. The adverse is happening, which is awesome. But we're selling more stuff this past weekend than we did 5 weekends ago on the initial launch. The initial launch actually had way more content, way more quote unquote list love. But the testimonials are people flying in, Facebook groups, people already post how do I get in on these next products? So it's actually getting easier to sell new products after you just hit the list so many times. And I think it's a testament of building, as you said, building real relationships with your community and not treating them like an IP address or just, an @gmail.com.
Yeah, I had, as you know, not everybody who listens to this show knows the companies, my past with all of my companies, but I think I've told you one of my companies was a chain of health clubs, and for over a decade, almost 15 years, I think I was in that industry, and we had one location that was surrounded. We had multiple locations, but one location surrounded by 5 other health clubs. And within a very short period of time of us opening the doors here, most of those clubs went out of business. And the reason why was mostly because we took the time to understand our clients, our customers, the people who were actually members of our club. We understood them. We learned about them. We gave them what they wanted. And yeah, we could market the heck out of them. And we did. We had drinks for sale. We had bars for sale. We had a cafe in there. Then we were one of the first companies or gyms in New Jersey to charge to have spinning in there. And we charge for that. And we charge for some different aerobic. We charge and we charge. Well, we didn't penny pinch these people or nickel and dime them. But when they came in, they understood they could buy this and then they could add these other things on. And nobody ever got pissed at us for selling to them because we were only giving them what they wanted. And that was the end of it. Now, the retention in the industry back then was about 20 or 30% month over month.
Wow.
Our retention from the day we opened our doors, from the first month we opened up our doors ongoing for the plus decade that we were in business, was always in excess of 80%. Because we literally were there for our members, right? Exactly what you're talking about. And I think that kind of lesson could go into almost, not every industry, but gosh, almost every industry. Certainly every industry that deals B2C. You believe
Totally.
that?
I do. Unequivocally, I do. And I think this is a difference, but, I mean, you and I talk a lot about the psychology of selling as well, because I believe I owe it to people to sell them stuff, right? I know I'm helping them. So yes, NLP and sales and copy, and yeah, that's really important stuff. But, at the core of it, I know that if I sell them something, I'm actually helping their lives, right? Not only helping their lives, but then all the other stuff that we do, from ending plastic pollution, getting women out of sex trafficking, da 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 da. Man, if I sell, the more I sell, the more impact I know and I have across across the world. So we take selling really serious because of that impact, and it's not just about dollars and cents. And again, back to the relationship building, man. I mean, when you build a long lasting relationship, I started MyGreenFills. For those who don't know this, I didn't know anything about funnels.com 2015. I'm like, hey, I'm literally about to close the company. I have my wife on food stamps. Like my wife, you want to talk about, like, my pride died. Like now I'm on this entrepreneurial journey. I pivoted my company 3 times, and now I'm closing the doors. Like, I'm done. Like, I stick a fork in me, I am crispy. And I'm like, man, our original calling in this business was to, develop really safe, non-toxic, consumer products. We left that, we went into different industries. Let's do that. I'm like, screw this, supermarket stuff, slotting and shelf space and retail and couponing and demos and all the stupid stuff you got to do at retail. And I'm like, that sucked. I don't want to do that again. I'm like, all you have to do is build a website. You're a millionaire, I heard, right? So I'm like, how hard can it be? So I literally locked myself in a closet, read a bunch of books, and in 2 months' time, I had a site built, right? Shopify and da da da. I taught myself from scratch how to build websites. And we still have hundreds of subscribers that were with us in the first few months today. They're 5 years later, right? Still active subscribers 4 years later from the launch. They're still subscribing to laundry jug refills years later through price increases, formula updates. I mean, so much stuff that we've grown and learned since then. I know jack about anything. All I knew when I started this company was that shipping a 4-pound, 50-ounce laundry jug, liquid product, from Traverse City, Michigan to freaking San Diego was $14. And at a $12 MSRP product, that was the go out of business strategy. That's all I knew. And we reverse engineered the problem and started a website, prove concept, and see what happened. Well, here we are later, right? Like tens of millions, scaling, growing, and tens and tens of thousands of monthly subscribers all around the world that we're shipping to. And we still have subscribers, members from years getting something they can go to the store at any time. So I think it's a testament of, how much effort we put into, developing those relationships and telling the truth, right? And actually selling people what you tell them you're going to do and deliver and over deliver. So, and there's a lesson for just a matter if you're fortunate, someone just starting up, listening to Chris's podcast, watching his YouTube channel, man, I'm learning a lot from this guy. Here's a lesson. Doesn't matter where you are at any walk of your business, just tell the truth. Do good stuff that really helps people and tell the truth, and you'll be amazed when customers actually stick with you. So
Hey,
Where do we go
so
from?
yeah, so listen, one of the things that I wrote down over here as you were talking, because I wanted to ask you this question, was, or at least guide us in this direction, because I think this is huge for a lot of folks who are in offline companies. And one of the biggest challenges when I went from, offline exclusively to an online entity, and now that I have multiple online companies and offline companies, and I can see almost like looking inside of a fish tank and seeing how everything kind of operates and how the marriage of the online and offline massively benefits everything. So from an offline company, which you've had before, you had the restaurants, you've had other entities
Yep.
before,
Real estate.
to a company that is a hybrid now. You're a physical company with warehouses, which, by the way, we should talk about that, how you got through that adversity of your warehouse burning down and all the other adversities that you've been through. But you've got a warehouse, you've got a big team of people inside of your office. This is not like you vendor all these things off to different countries. How you marry the online in order to massively boost the offline aspect of it. So what do you think some of the key components of that are?
Yeah. Well, I've learned, man, I've learned so much in this journey. And I've learned a lot from you too. Like, and having, the challenge with how fast we've grown as a company. I have some amazing friends that, I consider true friends, true brothers that, allow to speak into my life. The challenge is, when in my peer group, especially the entrepreneur peer group, when it comes to growth, revenue, employees, and so forth, I'm probably like a few clicks larger than a lot of my peer group. And the challenge with that is I'm stepping on landmines that they don't even know exist, right?
Yeah.
Which is refreshing when you and I talk, because I'm like, hey man, like I see that I'm about to blow off a leg because this is like growing out of control. What do you think? And you're like, dude, I had this time back in the health club when this happened. I was like, oh my goodness, it totally makes sense because I don't have a lot of that in my life, right? Um, but I think what's important is, when you talk about like brick and mortar, offline, online, is that there's so many dynamics in my companies, and a lot of them cross over at people that work on the MemberBox side, people that work on the MyGreenFills side, some of my other investments and assets. Like there are some people that support stuff that I do board work and advise. So there's lots of moving parts in my life right now. And I think one of the currents, the golden thread that gets weaved through all the companies, whether it's internal culture or external, right, to online customers, is just coming from a heart-centered place with my staff, with customers, being truthful, being honest. People really appreciate that. I have staff with me again. We have such low turnover in staff. I was recently on stage in Arizona for a group of health and wellness entrepreneurs, and there's this guy that sits down with me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm building this health kind of like medical facility group. I don't want to get too deep into it." And he's like, I have like 6%. Sometimes it gets up as high as 11% churn of our employees month over.
Well,
And he was like, what do you think I should do about it? And I said, 6% a month? Like you're losing 6 to 10% of your staff. Like 1 out of 10 people ish a month leave your company. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, number one, how are you treating your people? I mean, I'm like, yeah. And he was like, well, what's your churn? I said, yeah, it's about 6. He was like, oh, wow, really? And I'm like, yeah, in about 4 years. I think I hit your number over like, almost a half a decade. So I can't relate to that. And I think, when people, and I heard the way he talked about his staff, right? He talked about his nurses and he talked about his people. And I'm like, well, as soon as you stop hating your employees, maybe they'll stick with you. and a lot of people, like I hear so many times, I mean, this, man, we got to go to these masterminds, these group sessions, and like, oh, my freaking customer's this, or my client's this, and da 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 that. I'm like, well, you know what? You attract your objections to yourself. If you freaking hate you hate your customers, you're going to attract way more customers that you hate, and you'll never be able to actually. They're going to know you hate them, right? And your employees and your staff. So something that, and you and I speak a lot about this when it comes to like grooming leaders and how we develop leaders. I can't solve all the problems in the company anymore. There was a point where I could solve anybody's problem anywhere. I did anything, everything, built everything. I don't have that luxury anymore. And, now I have to develop leaders that can take the company forward, right, when I'm not looking. Because I believe one of the judges of a great leader is not when you're there and you're looking, it's when you're not there and you're not looking, right? Can somebody, take your vision forward without you having to look? And I know I've kind of gone on a couple rabbit trails here, but I think that there's a current that gets weaved through, whether you're a brick and mortar business, right? Health club, doctor's office, retail shop, whatever, or you're a .com business. And unfortunately, you didn't say hi, you couldn't read the facial expressions on that customer's face, right? Or you couldn't see that person was wincing or whatever. Like, you have to anticipate their pain online. And it's harder to build relationships online than it is in person, right?
Yeah.
Because your personal training in a health club and someone says, ow, to stop, right? But online, if you're a coach and you're selling content and someone says ouch, whether that's physical or metaphorical, you don't know when to stop.
Yeah.
So it's harder to build that relationship with somebody online, I believe, than the B2B, brick and mortar world. But if you intentionally love your customers, love your staff, yeah, some of your customers are going to drive you freaking crazy, right? We got lots of them. I mean, we get, I think, 10,000 support tickets a month for our companies. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we do around here. But our staff fundamentally loves our customers, and, it comes through. So I don't know. Hope
Yeah,
that answers the
but
question.
and so let's stop at that for a second. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that doesn't start with your support staff, right? So in every one of the companies that I have been fortunate enough to be part of or start and grow, it no matter what mindset I have had consistently in the meetings with those teams is the mindset that ends up in my team and in our customers and in our marketing and in our prospects. It trickles down. And I'm not saying that I am anything special inside the company. I'm saying that whoever is sitting in that upper box, whether it's the CEO, the president, the owner, the whatever you want to call yourself, that person is responsible. They have such a strong responsibility to bring the juice every single day, to get people to drink the Kool-Aid every single day, to live not just with passion, but with empathy, right?
Sure.
Like you were saying before. I mean, I think that sums up a lot of what you were saying before.
Yeah, let me talk about grandma for a second. So my grandma, right, who was like, she raised me as a kid. My mom, single mom, worked 80 hours a week to pay for me and my brother's school and keep us food on the table. So like grandma, raised us in the South Bronx. And I mean, I walked the cheese line, and like there was I don't know if you even know what the cheese line is, but like food stamps back in the 80s, you can literally get online for like freaking hours and they would give you like a block of freaking American cheese, like a big block of cheese. And that's literally like going to school. We had cheese sandwiches. Like that was it, right? So like it was hard knocks. My grandma had a lot of wisdom. And, she always said something is that, the fish stinks from the head first. And that always stuck with me. And I have, I've said that phrase in the company. So I should probably get plaques made for the office here, because it's true, right? Is that it all begins and ends with the owner, the CEO, the president of the company, right? I mean, and if somebody's myself on my to-do list, because if I'm having a bad, right, and if I'm in my own space trying to deal with my own crap, I mean, I've got dozens of people around the companies that are looking to me to lead. and I have to put my stuff. I gotta get rid of my stinking thinking. I gotta clean up my crap, because if not, it trickles down. I mean, you mentioned earlier, like when our office building blew up in the beginning of the year. I mean, you and I were just getting on our call. Like I was, I literally we were just getting on our weekly call, and like the building shook, and like freaking smoke's pouring in, and like our building freaking burns down. And I was
I
in the middle
remember
of
because you carried your
like,
laptop out there
I'm
to
like,
show
here,
me.
I'm like, here, look, my freaking building is on fire right now. And you were like, why the hell are you talking to me? And I'm like, oh, everyone's okay.
Hang up.
Yeah, hang up. And at first I was like, oh, everyone's fine. It was a miracle. Like, dude, like a 20-foot rolling door, overhead door, blew 25 feet into the parking lot. It was a backdraft, massive fire of a tenant in the back of the building that was a mechanic, like massive freaking like. And I was in the middle of lots of other tribulations at that time, personally, family, and people, and various health situations in my life. And it was a really freaking intense season. Companies going nuclear, partner being, retiring out of the business. I mean, there's like so many things going on. And, I am used to dealing and leading through crisis, right? Restaurants, building restaurants, having dozens at a time. I'm no stranger to leading through insanity. And that was on a Thursday. So Friday morning, opening, like everyone's like, all right, let's meet at the warehouse and let's have a huddle. So we meet at the warehouse, which is just next door from the office that burned down. And everybody's like, all right, Stephen, we're good. Everyone's good. Like, what are we gonna do? And I was like, guys, I don't know. They're like, what? I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I am literally like freaked out right now. I mean, MemberBox, which again is going nuclear as far as growth. What we're about to do is to completely disrupt e-commerce in its fundamental way. I'm like, that beta had went live 4 days before the fire. 4 days. The
I
first
remember.
cart closed on MemberBox 4 days before the freaking fire. There's so many moving parts. MyGreenFills is going nuclear. And I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I literally don't know what to do. And let me tell you something. It took us months to recover from that one sentence.
Yeah.
It took months to rebuild momentum and culture. And like, there was so many moving parts. To
Oh, yeah.
anybody that,
But
yeah,
listen. So I've said this to you 1,000 times, and I say it to people constantly, my kids all the time. Also, I say it to myself constantly, and I think it's probably the most important thing question you could ask yourself in business. And I want to ask you right now about all of that you just talked about. What is the lesson that you learned, right? Because when we can't go through shit like that without learning a lesson. Otherwise, we're doomed to keep repeating that shit over and over again. I mean, your building's not going to blow up all the time, right? However,
what?
anytime the building blows up, however, whatever that means, if it's losing a client or if it's getting a huge client that you don't have the inventory for, whatever it is, if you go into your team and you say, I don't know, like that is always going to cost you a month to be able to recover from that. So what do you believe the lesson was there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's twofold. I think there's a natural application and a metaphysical mindset application. I think, I could be a wise ass for a second. What I naturally learned is that my insurance company was a piece of crap and I needed a better insurance company. So, yeah, I got sold a freaking river on insurance policies. And yeah, so I learned the value of a really awesome insurance writer. Because that was not fun. And still, I mean, it's December. We're days away from December, and I'm still navigating through that from March. So insurance was the biggest natural one, and I think from a mindset perspective, because again, I was in a pretty pressure cooker situation. I mean, you know the details, and between family members sick and businesses and lots of stuff going on, was something that I do believe I did a fairly decent job at during that process, but something I've got a really found respect for was embracing pain, was embracing the chaos, because I knew that ultimately it was going to make me stronger and better. And I remember lots of times, like literally, like not know, like how do I get out of this? Like how this
Yeah.
is just there's how the heck do I navigate through this? And it was just one step at a time. So I think that the biggest lesson learned is that the adversity is going to come. right? Right now, we have adversity in the companies. These are all very high class problems, right? Like we don't have, unfortunate, thank God, we do not have any low class problems anymore. Like, oh my goodness, how do I make payroll on Friday? I'm very grateful that I've been there more times than I'd like to admit. But challenges do come, and then the biggest mindset thing is to run towards them because the book was written. Obstacle is the way. Was to charge right after your obstacles, and don't sweep them under the rug. Don't wait for them to solve themselves because they're not. And when I finally got my head out of my ass and stopped feeling bad for myself, and again, we're only talking about like a 1 or 2 week period of time where my head was all screwed up. It had months of implication as far as momentum and impact, months. But once I finally got my head out of my butt and I started like getting clarity on what was the next step, because there's so many things to do. It's like, where do you start? Like, what problem do you solve first? And I just got to just solve the closest one, shoot the closest gator to the boat. Don't take aim. The problem that's going to come next week, you can't. Right now, you just got to solve one sequential biggest problem that you can at a time, and you do it. And another thing that we learned through that process was how powerful communication was within the team, especially within the leadership team. Because when everyone's running, right, and you have incoming fire, if people don't know where they are and what they should be doing or what they should not be doing, or what are the closest proverbial gators in the boat, and everyone in like as a team conquering at a time. When we had these seasons where it's like everyone's running in their own direction, everyone, unless you have really bad employees, right, people that are like malicious and really are trying to hurt you, outside of that, I believe that staff people will genuinely really want to make the decisions the best decision they can with the data that they have in their mind, and they're going to do the best that they can. So they may be incorrect, but they're not wrong, right? They may make the incorrect decision because that's not what they're supposed to be doing, but they're not wrong because in their heart they're like, no, I'm really thinking about doing the right thing. So in the midst of chaos, it was really talking a lot and having lots of micro huddles about things to talk through, who's doing what and how they're doing it, because we definitely spun our wheels solving problems that were easily solvable. And then there were problems, and I'm being very vague, but there were multiple problems that were coming up that 2 or 3 people working on simultaneously, not even knowing that other people were doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So, based.
so you said something vital over here about your team, which I just want to emphasize. It's your team's making decisions, and I think that's rare. Like it is rare that you have somebody on your team who, without training, makes decisions. So the biggest challenge in any company is not that people make bad decisions; it's that people don't make decisions. Yeah. So people who don't make decisions, the worst fucking thing you could have. People who make bad decisions, second worst thing. But you could train that person. You could train them to make a better decision, but normally the person who can't make a decision can't be trained. Like that's their personality. But when you get these people who are literally, your team is making decisions during adversity,
Yeah.
that's freaking amazing. And that, again, that comes from the top. So
Yeah. I
amazing.
mean, I had when we built out this brand new office suite, living walls, like brand new gourmet kitchen. Like I built out a really cool place for my staff, which was awesome. And when we kind of like, we opened the first day in the office, we got a certificate of occupancy. I kind of broke down and I teared up with my staff, and I got the whole crew over here, like almost 50 people in the office. And I said, hey guys, a few months ago when the building blew down, burned down, and I was a freaking hair away from pulling the plug on this company, or at a bare minimum, hitting the pause button, right? And just so there's no way, it's hard building 2 growth companies simultaneously as CEO, like as owner operator, plus all the other stuff that I do. But when you're owner operator, a startup or company, and I just knew like I'm in this triage mode. I'm like, I got to cut one so that I don't lose the other. And I really, that 2 week period that I talked about a few minutes ago of like, I need to just like get into my head and just pray and think and strategize. What am I going to do? I mean, I looked at all my chess pieces. I looked at the whole, all of the assets, people, capital, brick and mortar, I mean, all of my assets in my mind. And I'm like, can I get through this? Do I have the resources, the people, the capital, the real estate, the equipment, blah, 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 to get through this? And to lots of those, check marks, there were lots of no's. But the one that was like, sharpied with, in my own mind, with, highlighter around it was my team. And I'm like, man, I know I've got the people to get me through this. And it's the only, I mean, if it wasn't for my people, I would have shut down MemberBox, or at a bare minimum, put the pause button. But I didn't. And I'm glad that I didn't now, because now it's like growing incredibly. And, what we're about to do in Q1 is just going to create a ripple effect that is going to just change. I mean, what we're saying, a lot of people are saying, democratize e-commerce. And I had the temptation of shutting it down, man. And if it wasn't for my people, I would have did it.
Well, hey, listen, that's a good story. It's a better story to tell over dinner next year when this is $1 billion company.
Amen.
But let's touch on this, because I think we have, a lot of there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of business owners who look at this and they say, I have this business that I'm struggling to build. And when they hear me speak and they say, well, I've got this portfolio of companies that I work in, and their mind just stops. Like, how do you do multiple companies? And it's not much harder than building one company. In fact, building one company at a time, I'm going to go out there on a limb and saying that's probably harder than building multiple companies at a time, because when you have what you were just talking about, when you understand how to build a team, and you're building a company that synergistically builds the other company, supports the other company, and that one supports this company, like you have, right? So let's talk about handling multiple entities, because I think it comes down to a few things, and I want your input. Let's just make a little list, and I'm just going to start the list with being able to understand, being able to stay focused on the few actions that move the needle the most, which is difficult because every single day we have these decisions to make, right? You get up. Do I act like I like to exercise in the morning? And so I ask that question, and you look at this timeline that may be this straight line, but we don't live on straight lines. We live on a line, and then we either say, yes, I should work out, and then that line goes up here, or no, I don't work out, and we live on this plateau, right? But if we go this way, yes, I work out, then after that workout, then I've got 2 or 3 or 4 more questions that I ask that could bring me in different directions. So there's never this straight line that we live on, which I think is the part that confuses everybody. Everybody looks at this straight line in business and says, I want to build this company. It doesn't work that way, right? So I think when we learn how to stay focused on the actions that truly make the biggest difference, and then say no to everything else during that day, unless it's those actions. Like in my companies, I run most of my companies with daily meetings. I have daily meetings with every single company that I'm an owner or partner in, and it is magical for us, right? And I've been doing this for decades, and it is the way I do it. It may not be the way you do it or somebody else does it, because they may hate meetings. That's how I do it, and I move the needle like that. It's not all we do. Obviously, I also work in every company because I'm an employee of every company I have. But what we stay focused on, and then what we don't do, equally important, what we do not do to what we do. So how do you do it? Like, what are some of the core concepts also for you?
It's a really good question. Well, one, I love meetings because I thrive in a collaborative environment. So I joke around that I speak in 2 languages. I speak English and I speak whiteboards.
We speak the same 2 languages. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I do speak other languages, but those are the 2 main. And, to me, when getting people in our war room, in our conference room, There's glass everywhere on white walls. I mean, it's like always colored up with ideas and strategy and sticky notes. Oh my goodness, I should have invested in 3M with the amount of freaking Post-it notes that we have in this office. That I do love meetings. I have some set ritualistic meetings that either I or the company has on a regular basis. The daily meetings for me either is depending on, I kind of look at myself as a SWAT team leader.
Mhm.
When it comes to the daily meetings, every one of our teams, whether it's marketing, sales, operations, and we just broke operations up because the team got too big. So now now we have a procurement huddle, right? And it's
Mhm.
just only about supply chain because we break suppliers all the time now,
Yeah.
right? We manufacture. So, procurement, and then we have logistics and fulfillment. And now we have, dozens of people that are picking and packing. So that now has its own huddle. And what I do is if there's a fire or a serious problem in one of those teams, that's when they call me in as a sounding board. And then I'll come in and ask questions, right? I just ask more questions than I solve them. And I probably can solve 90% of them. I know that this is being recorded and I'm not sure if my staff will listen to this, but and if they did, that's cool because then they can read me better because now I actually don't solve many problems anymore. I mean, I just come in here, do this, do that, right? Because I've been there, I've done that now, and I've fixed a lot of things. Where now I come in and I just keep asking questions more and more and more until the group itself solves the freaking problem. And then when I feel like and sometimes it was my idea that I was already going to say, maybe it's a better one. But when you feel like the energy shift in a problem and like there's an aha moment, then I believe my job of the leader, is to then exploit that aha moment until everyone is completely clear on that aha moment. So I find myself doing that way more now, right? I would say 50, 60% of my time, day-to-day time, and I put a lot of time in, as all entrepreneurs do, is with my people, right? And, mentoring my mentors, leading my leaders. And um, and as far as kind of to parlay into multiple companies, MemberBox came out of MyGreenFills.com,
Yeah.
right? Because MyGreenFills was growing, a couple of years ago, but I'm like, here I am, in all these massive health and wellness communities, on stages, entrepreneur this, awards this, and all this kind of stuff. And I just looked at, man, what can I create that leverages the assets that I have, right? People, equipment, resource, brick and mortar, real estate. What can I create? Software, developers. I have all these people. What can I create that takes my culture, my team, by democratizing that over another company? So I didn't go from an e-commerce business to starting a health club, which I know zero about, right? It's like even if I started a health club, number one, I know nothing about it, but if I did, I have zero resources for that type of company.
Mhm.
I don't have people that in my ethos, in my toolbox, that can do that. But when we look at bolt-on companies, right? So now I can afford a CTO, right? A high-paid, really high-end technology officer, because he can overlook two separate teams. I can now, right, look at a CFO. I can look at a COO. I can look at some specific teams that and team leaders that I can cross-pollinate across other companies because there's so much alignment. Call center, right? Member experience. We talked about it. We started building those relationships, um, and with our customers. Well, I think we're really freaking good at that, right? Getting
Yeah.
people on the phone and serving them. Well, I have great leaders and great leadership in that team. Well, what if I just expanded that team? Well, now I can. So I think it's, when people have the ability and have the resources too, I mean, running two companies does give me the leverage to bring in higher talent than just one company can afford. Um, so that's where leverage gets created, and it has for us.
Yeah. So I'm gonna speak to something that you said just so that I don't get a bunch of hate mail from people. You said you love meetings. I do also, as you know. However, I'm going to make that more fine-tuned because I know the meetings that you run, right?
Yep.
You and I have been together long enough in Club 28 for me to know exactly how you handle things with your team.
Yeah.
You run strategic meetings. Like our meetings are very, very strategic. So instead of waiting for everybody to, post in and say meetings are, waste of time. I read this book, and this book, and they say don't do meetings or whatever the case is. So meetings that are highly structured, where people know how to come prepared, they do come prepared, and they give. So everybody understands what actions they need to take that day in order to help the company get to the next level. And those meetings are basically aligning everybody so everybody's actions are pushing the company forward, right? So they're short, they're sweet, to the point, and they get so much juice and jazz out of them that they move forward, right? And it's not just motivation by any means, it is strategy. And then if there's an obstacle that somebody has, we as a team blow that fucking obstacle up, because the number one thing that slows a team down is one person who has
No
one
doubt.
obstacle, right? That slows them down, then the whole fucking engine gets gummed up.
Let me speak to that. Man, that's so much wisdom right there. I mean, there's so many sound bites just in what you just said is so powerful. When I go into meetings, and we've morphed, right? And anybody thinks that they fully arrived is either deluded, right, or lying to themselves. And so it's an ever evolving process. But we're like the snapshot of today is that when we have our strategic meetings, whether it's daily huddles, weekly meetings, etc., is that we have a set agenda that's used across all the teams.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's procurement, fulfillment, marketing, ops, whatever. We have, Seth Godin wrote that book, Everything is Marketing, right? So, and great book. And so I even look at my staff meetings as a marketing opportunity for me to market to my staff, right? And what am I marketing to them? I'm marketing clarity. I'm marketing vision. I'm marketing to them the end zone, right? Even if that end zone keeps moving or changes, we go to a different game. My job is to market to them their future, our collective futures. So when I go, that's my role, right? Is the marketing inside these meetings. But our basic framework that we do, because again, the rules of three are very powerful. We look in our meetings, it's yesterday, today, and tomorrow, right? So yesterday, we start with every meeting, the metrics that matter, where are we at, right? Strategically, the scoreboard, and that's mostly 90% of that is yesterday. This is what freaking happened. Either we did or did not hit a target. We have to readjust a target, but it's like all the boring crap. And then we save the middle part is like what's happening today, and I intentionally make our staff just only talk about all the freaking great stuff that is happening, right? We applaud other team members. We're grateful for other team members. Man, this person freaking, I had this problem. This person got me out of this bind. If Pat did not jump in and get this done, we would have had a freaking catastrophe. So we use this as an opportunity to build each other up, and that's what's happening today. Let's be grateful for what's happening today, and now it's tomorrow. Now what the hell are we gonna freaking do? We already know what happened yesterday. We know how great everybody is. We're all energized. Now we get into what you're talking about, and which you've helped me bring clarity to, right? Is all right. What are the top five? You and I talk about so many times. What are the top five things that you could do to move the goal forward, to hit the
Yeah.
goal? I mean, you use the analogy, earlier about people hating meetings. Here's, I think, one of the reasons why is I'll use a football analogy. People are always thinking about the next 3 or 4 yards, right? And it's like, hey, what's just going to happen? Hey, what's going on? What happened the last 3 or 4 yards? What's happening here? And the problem is, but you can run out of bounds all the freaking time. And it happens in business and in culture. But I believe what our job is as CEOs, because that's who's listening to this podcast, right? Here's who's listening to this, is your job is to continue to reiterate over and over again, even if you think you've done it 10 times, you need to do another 10, is where is the freaking end zone?
Mhm.
Because listen, people are going to come at you. You're going to have adversity. Problems are going to freaking come, right? But when you make those pivots and those changes, as long as everyone knows we're getting into the freaking paint, it doesn't matter sometimes it doesn't matter how you get there. As long as you actually get there. And what our job as CEO is to make sure everyone knows where the freaking goal line is, where are we running towards. so that if you have to veer left, you veer, you run, you just keep freaking going downfield. And I think that's, one of the biggest problems with CEOs that I mentor, that you mentor, is when adversity comes, everyone's looking at, just the next play. They're always thinking about the next campaign, the next offer, the next this, and it's just solving today's problems and maybe tomorrow's problems, but for shit sure, it's not freaking next month's problems. So there you go. That's how I learned
Yes.
me.
So when we're talking about meetings, I think that it's important. So a lot of people don't understand how they could have meetings in their company, or they can't see themselves facilitating a meeting because they believe that they are not good meeting leaders. However, like we use meetings as a very structured yet informal way of getting people to move forward, and we focus on three main things also, just like you do. Slightly different things, but we focus on only three things in every meeting. Yet we use the meetings to develop people into leaders, and asking the questions and getting them to, when somebody has an issue, getting them to share with you their solutions, or the team brainstorming on a solution. That's huge. So let's talk a little bit about developing leaders, because I think that's vital, because without a doubt, some of the most profitable use of my time ever in any company I've ever been associated with has been developing leaders,
So
because
good.
one good person is a game changer for any freaking company. I live, eat, and breathe that rule in every one of my companies. So we try to attract, by creating a culture inside of our company, we try to attract the best talent into the company, no matter if that's a janitor or a C-level player or anybody in between. Doesn't really make a difference. I want the best of the best. However, once they're inside of this network of ours, once they are in our company, whether they are an employee, an independent contractor, or a vendor, I don't care. I want them to be infused with everything that they need to become a leader themselves, right? So we use everything, not just meetings, but we use every touch point to help people to gain independence inside the company, to make decisions that are smarter and better to get us towards our goal, and to be part of our meetings in a way that allow them to be part of this group brainstorm that we have, that help us to think outside the box and create new and better ways to grow, right, and to scale. So
So
developing leaders. Let's go down there, because I know you've got a ton of great employees. I know that your culture is amazing. I've talked to some of your employees, via video.
yeah,
I have met several of them. I met your CFO and several other folks. Your marketing dude, just a couple of your new big hires. I've watched over the year and a half or two that we've known each other. I've watched you onboard people who were not good, and then transform into this leader who you are attracting such tremendous talent. Before, you were hiring warm bodies just to fill a spot.
it was
Now
survival.
you're like bringing on these
Yeah.
game changing people.
And I have a lot of kind of my mindset, right? Like I was hired. I mean, I was just in this, I was in survival mode for so long, right? Like I said earlier, telling my wife when I started MyGreenFills, I'm like, hey, babe, I got to take myself off payroll again. She's like, well, we can't afford food. I'm like, well, what are we going to do about that? So it was a big jump for me, like, being this, and I know what it's like to make millions, right? So I'm not no stranger to it. And, to be humbled like that was big, because now it's like, the difference from moving from surviving to thriving. And a lot of times back in the day, it was like, hey, I can't afford to pay you what I believe or you believe your position is worth. And I always had this mindset for a long time. Like I had to like like I always felt beholden to my staff, right? When I couldn't afford to pay them what I really wanted to pay them. And, now that we can and that we do, the mindset's shifted to like, hey, now I'm going to attract team members for thriving and not for surviving, right? And, I did make a couple not so great hires, right? Last year, because it was survival, right? I made a C-level hire for 3 weeks after the fire, right? Because I'm like, I need help, right? So I'm like, I'm going to hire a C freaking MO that can take a lot of day-to-day marketing stuff. What a big freaking mistake. I mean, that was a huge investment and a huge mistake. That
Well, let me
person's not
stop
with.
you because just to prevent any lawsuits here. Great person,
Oh,
great at what
phenomenal.
he did, bad fit, right? Bad
I
fit at the
mean,
wrong time.
I
So
mean,
it was a bad hire for the company.
resume, unbelievable. I mean, pedigree, ridiculous, right? I mean, but the difference was that person came from Fortune as CMO or Chief Growth Officer of Fortune 100 companies, right? Fortune 500, Inc. 500 companies.
Limitless
Fat.
budget. Let's just define what you mean by
Oh,
that.
so what I mean by that is they're like, oh, I need to hire a team of copy. I'm going to hire 3 full-time copywriters. We're going to let them go for 3 months, and then we'll see who works out. And we're
Yeah,
just going to burn $100,000 to see who. I mean,
yeah,
like that's the way really big companies do it, right? So that's this person was used to having endless resources, endless budgets. And I was like, no, like we can't do that. We're a cash flow lean start like growth company. We have so this and again, I didn't go deep into the weeds with that person, and we don't have endless resources. Yeah, we're a fast growing company. Yeah, we're growing, but I can't just hire 4 copywriters to see what happens, right? We need a
right.
freaking we need a A player day zero.
Right. But the biggest expense, having watched it from outside and seeing the whole process, the biggest expense there was your time, your mental bandwidth, which as entrepreneurs, we all have very limited mental bandwidth because we have so much that we focus on. No matter what stage of growth we're at, as long as our company's in growth mode, we are wearing too many hats. Like it doesn't make a difference if you are a $1 million company, $10 million company, or $100 million or $1 billion company. If you're in growth mode, you're doing too many things because you're growing, the definition of which means we are adding more arms, more departments, more what products, more whatever. So it requires more of the mindset that put us into growth mode, right? You had none, no extra mental bandwidth. Yet the amount of time that it took to try to train that particular employee to work well inside of your culture was mind numbing. My eye was twitching watching it.
Yeah. Well, let me speak to something that, a Chris-ism that stuck with me. I've got plenty of criticisms over the last couple of years. But here's one criticism that I think was like really, and I've paid this ism forward. I don't know if you actually invented it or not, but I've given you the full credit for it.
Thank you.
Is where you said, "Hey, have you in the last day have you had 2 arguments in your mind fully with full back on?" Like
Yes.
full arguments in your mind with this person in the last freaking, 24 hours. I'm like, I've had that in the last 30 minutes. Right. And I'm like, and you were like, dude, this is robbing you of your peace, robbing you of your joy, and robbing you of the stuff that you really should be focused on because that's where your gifts and your powers are. And I was like, wow. Right. I literally just paid that forward to one of my employees who has a team member who's awesome. That is an absolute powerhouse, get stuff done. But that person is like, I mean, the squeaky wheel. I mean, like the water cooler conversations. And she's like, what do you think I should do? I'm like, well, here's what I think you should do. In the last 24 hours, and I'm like, well, now you have a decision to make. And man, that was an aha moment. I've paid that forward to a lot of people because I mean, that's like, think about, what we as CEOs, if we have all these arguments in our mind with a business partner or whatever, an employee, and we have all these arguments and they're constantly, if this, then that's, and 99% of the time will never come true that way. How much growth did you rob yourself of because you weren't focusing on actually growing your company? You're focusing on fighting with somebody in your mind that didn't happen. Literally, I've even had this conversation with Amy, my wife, and we have a great marriage, and it's not been easy. But I'm like, babe, I just had 3 arguments with you in my mind in the last 20. I've done this even at home. I'm like, wait, seriously. I've had 3 arguments in my mind with you in the last day. We need to talk about this stuff. And we do, man. It's like been really, so thank you for that. It was a criticism that is that will stick forever.
Yeah, so I will tell you that I have been called psychotic when I brought that up to some people for having arguments in my head. And but to be clear, never an entrepreneur. Like I've never had the conversation with an entrepreneur and had them not get it instantly. That is one of that's one of my personal litmus tests, and also any C-level person inside of any of our organizations. It's our litmus test. If we are driving to the office and we're having an argument, like no radio on, no
Yep.
personal development stuff, no nothing, you let your mind just gestate on nature, and you find it going to an argument with one person over and over. It's time, right? It's now because it's robbing your mental bandwidth. But you say that to somebody who doesn't understand entrepreneurialism, not Amy, not your wife, because she's lived with you, so she gets this. She doesn't need to be an entrepreneur. She understands entrepreneurialism, right? But somebody who doesn't get this, somebody who has been an employee their entire life, it takes some explanation. Otherwise, they think possibly, like this one person thought of me, that I have mental issues because I'm having arguments with people in my head.
Well, it was a great life lesson, man. So I'm all in on it. Made total sense. I mean, so yeah, I mean the surrounding yourself with great people that you don't argue with in your mind, is really awesome. And I don't have any of those in my company, at any of them right now. I'm sure that day will come again. And I think that's a testament why we're moving so fast and everyone's really jazzed up and having a great time here and moving quickly. And we're working really hard. Like our people are working, pushing really hard, but there's no negative juju. Like everyone's really jazzed up. Because I don't think that there's anybody having mental arguments in their head with any of their coworkers, and that's been there. Yeah, I mean, and we had some problems, right? We had, some of the things that we'll talk, since we're still talking about leadership. Did I ever tell you about the washing feet thing?
No.
Okay. So there was a period of time. It was back in August. Yeah, July, August. It was summertime, just this past summer, and grooming leaders. And what I see when you're grooming a leader, right? Not a manager, right? Not someone that's managing people. I'll leave supervisor, manager stuff, but you're actually grooming someone to lead other humans towards the goal line. What I find in aspiring young leaders, and it doesn't matter about age, I mean, just like it's a maturity thing, is that leaders, especially that have not been in the game, that really care about leading, they typically, you talk about these forks in the road, go one of two ways. They either become, I'm the freaking leader, I've got the C on my freaking title, so do what the hell I'm telling you to, Jack, because I've been very clear where the end zone is, like freaking go.
That's not a fucking leader.
Right. But people, when tempted, it's like, what do I do? And then another way that people go is, hey, come on, kumbaya, let's be friends, and blah blah blah. And that's not a freaking leader either.
No.
Right. But people that are aspiring to leadership, when they're trying to find their style, right, of how they lead, it's either very demonstrative, do this, and here's why, or can we please be friends, and can you do this, and here's why. And I had a leader in one of the companies this past summer that, again, groomed from bottom up, saw something, saw gifts, saw talents, and was taking away more. I just got the freaking director of ops position here. What's up, son? Right? And it was creating some really bad dissension in the company. And to the point where people was like, hey, listen, if something doesn't change, I'm leaving. Like, whoa, like I've never had that before. Again, we have 6% churn over like 5 years. I don't know what that's like. And so I put all my leaders in the conference room, and I'm like, guys, again, as we're growing, we've tripled the company in the last 4 months. We've tripled our staff in the last 2 months, and I'm going to teach you all something that I've adopted in my career, in my life. And I'm like, if you just get this one principle from me, I know it doesn't matter whether you're here with me or whether you're on to another career path, whatever you're doing, if you just and I kept going, there's one thing, if you do this one thing with your people, they'll follow you, and they'll lead, doesn't matter if it's in the middle of a fire, metaphorical or physical, they'll follow you. And I'm like, so I'm like, who's ready to, who wants to be my, who wants to go first? And, and it just so happened that the person that was the loudest, the person that was causing all the freaking dissension, right, was like, I'll go first. I'm like, perfect. Perfect. I'm like, sit here. And, I walked outside and I grabbed a bucket with warm water, and I proceeded to not only wash that person's feet, but I washed every single person's feet in the office, one by one. And I said, Chris, I'm a man of faith, and I take faith really serious, and I build my companies with those as models. And I said, there's a leader that walked this planet a few thousand years ago, and he had a group of guys that he was rolling with, and he could have just walked right into the temple and says, I'm the freaking dude, like, follow me, right? He had all of the credentials, he could do whatever, and he just walked right in. And he didn't, and he took out a wash basin that night, and he washed some feet. And I'm like, you know what? If you understand that you first serve your coworkers and your staff, and you love them and you serve them, they'll freaking follow you. The reason why the most of the people in this room are still here in the midst of years of, I don't know how we're going to make payroll on Friday, office buildings blowing up, da 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 da, is because I've washed your feet, and now I'm going to do it physically. Let me tell you something. I'm surprised I never told you that story, because it literally was a defining moment in this company. Like, dude, like grown ass men, like some of which are like sitting on the other side as well right now. I just looked over, like grown ass men freaking crying, right? Like tears, like breakthrough moments. And literally all that nonsense stopped. Like all the freaking shenanigans, people that were like, oh, it was like this, because I had my mind in rebuilding offices and all this stuff that I had going on. It was like, oh, well, this department this, or this team member this. And it was like all of this, tennis, right?
Yeah.
And literally that was the moment it all freaking stopped. And, I believe that's how I want to groom leaders, is to teach them to serve their customers, serve their freaking coworkers, serve their families. And if we come from that position, I believe we can build teams that change the world. And that's what I want to do. So there you go. Yeah. Here's my story.
So amazing story. You haven't told me that before. That's amazing. So I'm going to go back to something that I said before, which I think is so important, that it drips down. So that lesson being so impactful for everybody around that table, my guess is that that's why we could get to the point in your company where you have, and I'll take part of the blame for this, why you have 10,000+ support tickets on a was it monthly basis or weekly basis at this point? If it's not weekly yet, we'll get there.
Yeah, but it's 10,000 a month, about
10,000 a month. And by the way, we should preface this by saying many of them are very, very good, right? Those are not like, oh my God,
problems.
No, it's all good stuff because of some cool creative marketing things that we decided to try. But that's why your team can handle that kind of growth. Yep. It's why you can go from I'm broke to, and I remember this. I have this burned in my head. The day you showed up for a meeting and you said, hey, I got to look at my phone. And on your phone was, you had opened up your app that showed your bank account. And it was, and you're like, it was so much further ahead than I ever saw. It was beautiful, right? So to go from building burning down, to go from tough times, to go from, team members that were not too happy, to everything gelling, is because it came from you, right? So the lesson is, we as entrepreneurs, we as business people, anybody else who's watching this right now, what can we do personally that if we live it inside of our organization, whether you have an organization of thousands of people or 5 people or all vendors, I don't give a shit. When you communicate with people, if you communicate with a set of internal values, whether it's as dramatic as you said, because that was a dramatic gesture, which is tremendous. When we do a dramatic gesture like that, it's always tremendous. Or it's just the daily subtle things that we do that instill in others the fact that we care about them, as opposed to bring me numbers, bring me numbers, bring me numbers. It is helping them to reach their goals in life by aligning their goals with the company goals, right? So that they know that they're part of a family and they're part of a team, as opposed to as soon as they stop making numbers, they're out, or their ass is on the grass. So
Totally.
that's important. That's powerful, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Um, and I think that's where we're going to wrap this, because we're way over time at this point. But it was a very powerful, awesome way to wrap that up, right? Bringing it all back to it's we can grow anything we want to grow in almost any industry we want to grow it. I mean, I've proved that. I'm in currently 4 completely different industries, but we've been in nearly a dozen industries with different businesses that I've built. All from leading from I want to help people to reach their goals. My prospects, my customers, my team members, my vendors, everybody. And you do the exact same thing. And so many other Club 28ers do the exact same thing. They push the envelope of growth staggeringly so. Staggeringly so. When I look at some people's numbers, I'm like, oh my God, you had that growth spurt in just a month. You had that growth spurt in just a year. How do you figure that out? And it almost always is because of team. Yeah, there's marketing. Yes, there's external branding things, there's ways to increase our reach, but it's our team being able to handle all that is the heart of everything.
No doubt. No doubt. There's never a shortage of ideas in any company, but there's typically a shortage of execution, and that's
Typically.
where almost all the time. Yeah, I mean that's where team comes in, and surrounding yourself with people that freaking give a crap, that believe what you believe,
And that are
is
willing to drive the company forward. So I know probably you see this in your company also. People over here, they will work from their house. They will work when the office is closed. They will work on Saturdays and Sundays. They will work on holidays. They will work, not because I ever asked them to. I literally, I am a proponent, a pusher of take more time off inside of my organization. Like I'll tell Emily all the time, like go home, take time, take the weekend. Don't answer your phone. Like don't, please. You deserve this. You need time. But people are just, this is part of their lives. And to get to that point, it's fun.
well. Before we leave, I just want to part with how much gratitude I have for you, and I'm just really grateful that you are taking this information that and your knowledge and your experience, which was typically sequestered to a few stages or to a few clients, and now democratizing that for people that maybe don't have right now the capacity to retain you as an advisor, that you're taking these life lessons and making it available to people, because I believe if we inspire enough entrepreneurs to do really freaking good stuff, tell the truth, companies that matter, that we can fundamentally change the world. And I say this often from stage that, we're approaching an election year in the United States, right? And next year is going to be a noisy freaking season in the United States, right? And although that vote is important, right? President, Congress, whatever, I think, the vote with our dollars every single day, right? That's the vote that matters the most. And, for entrepreneurs that are doing good stuff, I believe if you have a really good company that's really helping people, you have a moral obligation to the world to get more people to vote better with their dollars towards you. And theoretically sounds really simple, but it's really freaking hard to build a company, right? There's only 10,000 easy steps to building a company. And to surround yourself with mentors and guides that can show you the way. I'm very fortunate. I have a guide that, I can bounce ideas off of every week, but if not, Chris, find somebody that has gone before you that can say, yeah, I've tried that, done that, don't do that, because those, that can help define you and help accelerate growth. Anyway, so just thank you for speaking into my life and my companies for the last couple of years. Looking forward to many more years of it, until I build my first $1 billion company, and then I enter you. But until that point,
We're done. Is that what you're saying?
we'll see.
Thank you. See ya. I'm a billionaire. Here you go. I had enough money to share.
Yeah, well, I do have enough to share. I'm very fortunate. But anyway, Chris, thanks, man, for being my brother and walking with me through some really freaking challenging times. Yeah, we're a better company. I have better companies because I have, people like you that speak into my life. So that's my parting thought.
I'm honored. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Bye for now.